Okay, so today, the 22nd of November, should be a day of mourning and remembrance, really, for the United States, because 61 years ago today, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was murdered in public in Dealey Plaza in Dallas. So today's the day, and I thought we could talk about it a bit, seeing as it's an anniversary.
He would be 107 today.
Right, yeah, 107, 180, yeah, he'd be dead anyway. His health wasn't good.
I mean, you've seen Jimmy Carter, maybe not.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I don't think JFK was going to make old bones. He had some terrible health issues.
Yeah.
Very, very terrible health issues. He was hooked up on all sorts of drugs all the time. Some people said, because it was a different world back then, right? Some people said that nowadays you probably wouldn't get away with it. People would know that you're on tons of medication. And
what, like with Joe Biden?
Good point. It'd be interesting to know exactly who's on more medication out of Joe Biden and JFK.
Or Jimmy Carter.
Or Jimmy Carter, right. Poor bloke.
How much are they pumping into both of those men to keep them alive?
His health was one of the main issues that the administration of his wanted to keep hidden, wasn't it?
JFK, yeah.
Yeah, wasn't that the Camelot image they wanted to create? And
that was a recurring thing for Democrats at the time after FDR, wasn't it?
Yeah. Part of his persona was being young and vibrant and healthy and lively, and it was not the case. He was sort of almost crippled. Quite often, he'd walk around with sticks.
I had no idea about any of this, actually.
Yeah.
That's
also,
really
sometimes he couldn't put his socks. I've read.
Yeah. He was injured in the war, and he had health issues anyway. And yeah, I mean, he's an actual war hero, man. Anyway, that's for another story. I'm fascinated by the Kennedy murder. I wrote an article quite a while ago now. When is this?
I don't know why you
January
keep emphasising the murder like people don't know that he got shot in the head.
Because they often call it the JFK killing or the JFK assassination. I feel like it should be people should be remembered it was a murder, right?
That's fair.
Or the mystery, the JFK mystery. Well, that's one of my angles, is that I don't think it is particularly a mystery. Now, I'm going to talk all about this, and the first thing I want to say is, it's one of those issues, I'm sure we'll get plenty of comments, because it's one of those issues where most people have got an opinion, and quite often it's a strong opinion. So I am of the mind that Oswald didn't act alone. I think there was, by definition, more than one person involved, so therefore a conspiracy on some level. Now, it's funny, the range of reaction you get to this, because a lot of people say, of course, like you're stating the obvious, like of course it's more than one person and Oswald didn't act alone, and anyone that looks at it for more than 2 seconds knows that. Like stop being a dummy about it. And then you get other people that are absolutely adamant that it was Oswald alone, and the official narrative, the Warren Commission says, is just true, essentially. I mean, even the BBC, not that long ago, a few years back, put out a documentary debunking all the conspiracy theorists, saying that it was Lee Oswald. So, if you're one of those people that insist that it was still Oswald, although how Oswald could have really changed the route of the motorcade, I don't know, as well as a million other things. But nonetheless, we will be going down the rabbit hole of it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone out of pure resentment towards Jack Kennedy. Okay, so I wrote this article, Dealey Plaza's Telltale Heart, a reference to Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart that keeps beating even after death and haunts people. I think the world is still haunted by the JFK murder in all sorts of ways, because you sort of know deep down in your heart that there was something amiss that day in Dealey Plaza. What it says, first and foremost, is we, whoever was behind it, we can and will kill the sitting president of the United States in public if needs be. So you're not safe. If we'll do that to John Kennedy, we'll do it to anyone, right? Nobody's safe. That's one of the things it says, right? So, okay, I wrote an article about that, and where's the next link? Who's doing my link?
If you would press that.
Okay, so I've talked about it before in various bits of content. One time I spoke to Dan Carlin. Thank you. Spoke to Dan Carlin one time. There's a clip there from my own channel, History Bro. Check out History Bro. You do the next link?
Yep.
But also, we made that article I wrote. One of our fans kindly made a video out of it. The video editing on this is far beyond my capabilities.
Oh, I did not mean to do that.
Oh, just play it though.
Movie.
Play this.
Why? The how and the who is just scenery for the public. Oswald, Ruby, Cuba, the mafia. Keeps them guessing like some kind of parlor game, prevents them from asking the most important question, why? Why was Kennedy killed? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up? Who?
Okay.
The answer is
Stop
he
playing.
had simply
Can you
gathered
pause that?
too many enemies.
You can pause
From
that.
organised.
Okay. So that was the great Donald Sutherland in Oliver Stone's JFK. And I say in the article that's my favourite part of that film because it really cuts to the quick, it really gets to the nub of things. There's one thing to endlessly talk about how many shooters there were on Dealey Plaza, endlessly talk about, you know, whether they were Corsican shooters, whether they were mafia, whether they were the Cuba connection, you know, the exact individuals in the Secret Service or in JFK's own government or in the CIA. But the real question is why? Why did somebody or some people feel the need for Jack Kennedy to be dead? So that's what the bulk of that article and that video is about, is talking about that. And I don't want to talk about that too much in this video because you can go and watch that. And
What's your hypothesis?
well,
Quickly.
you're in the height of the Cold War, arguably the height of the Cold War, the early 60s, right, just after the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the Kennedy brothers, Robert Kennedy Sr. as well, part of this, had made a giant number of enemies, starting with the mob, people like Giancana or Trafficante, the most powerful mob guys he'd made dire enemies of, the brothers had. Loads and lots of people in the deep state, from the Rockefeller brothers, David and Nelson, through to all sorts of oil interests, through to many generals, people like you might know the names of someone like Curtis LeMay or Lyman Lemnitzer, if anyone knows these people, generals, very powerful generals, people that were extremely senior in the State Department or National Security Advisor level people. There's two brothers, Mac and Bill Bundy, for example. Dean Rusk, I think Dean Rusk may well be in on it, allegedly, as Secretary of State at one point. And of course, the CIA. He'd made enemies of the CIA. Specifically, the head of the CIA was Alan Dulles. And he basically fired him, stopped him being the leader of the CIA and sort of give him a medal and kind of kicked him upstairs a little bit. The Cabell brothers, Charles P. Cabell, a general, and his brother, Earl Cabell, who just happened to be the mayor of Dallas. Just happened to be that. Various spies, people like Davy Atlee Phillips, Cord Meyer, people that were super high up in the CIA, like Frank Wisner or Dick Helms, Richard Helms, James Angleton, James Jesus Angleton.
So everybody you don't want to be enemies with, he was enemies with.
Extremely powerful people. And in the end, people that do assassinations, he'd made enemies of.
Like the CIA.
So there's a guy called Douglas Dillon. Most people probably never heard of Douglas Dillon. C. Douglas Dillon. It's people like this that I think were behind it ultimately. So do you want me to just tell you what I think happened?
Yeah,
Please.
Whether we can end up putting this on YouTube or not. But so I think that the original impetus came from Alan Dulles. Sometimes you think that people that might contrive these sorts of things are just sort of pure evil, just complete monsters, so that you can barely put a human face to it. But then that is the banality of evil, right? That it comes down to just normal guys that just wear trousers and socks and shoes and go to the toilet and comb their hair and are just a human being. Yeah. Can you go to the first pictures that I've got there?
Can we get the thing back up on the screen? Thank you.
So, well, keep going down to Alan Dulles. Look, so in my opinion, the guy that was the prime mover in assassinating a sitting president and making a whole generation of people cynical and that we still live in the shadow was just a guy called Alan who smokes a pipe
was going to say, he smokes a pipe. He can't be that bad a guy.
It's just Alan. It's just a bloke. Of course, he's not just a
I'm
bloke.
sure that's how he introduced himself to people as well. How would you prefer? Oh, just Alan.
Alan, what do you do? I'm just a bloke. No biggie. No, but he is one of the most powerful people, among the most powerful people in the world, being the head of the CIA in the 50s, early 60s. He's an old OSS guy. He was the CIA in all sorts of ways. And people said, there's a very, very interesting book, even though it is by a bit of a lefty, called The Devil's Chessboard. Talks all about Dulles in some detail. And there's accounts where people say when he would enter sort of a dinner party or something in the Georgetown circuit, he sort of shimmered with power. He's one of those people, sometimes you might be able to see it a bit with maybe an early Blair, or even an early George Bush Jr. actually. They sort of exuded authority and power, but him obviously in a very dangerous way. He thought of himself, or said that he was Secretary of State for unfriendly nations. Okay, so in the 50s and 60s, they were involved in assassinations. I mean, it's just a matter of record, just 100% the case. For example, just to scratch the surface, there's like Diem in Vietnam, the leader, they got him killed. Lubumba in Congo, Trujillo in the Dominican Republic. They tried to whack the beard, Fidel, a number of times. So it's one of the things they did. It's one of the things the CIA did. Perhaps still do. Certainly did do. Would have assassination teams. And there's many more as well when you look into it. Well, look, there's Alan with Jackie Boy. They were ideologically opposed. Alan's an old Cold Warrior. All these guys I mentioned, like the Cabell brothers, they're Cold Warriors. Their worldview is that the United States needs to defeat the evil Soviets and global imperialist Comintern-style communism, and that the United States should be the leader of the world. So that, but by any means necessary, sort of a thing. That's not really what JFK thought. JFK said in all sorts of speeches, even before he was president. No, the worst thing in the world is imperialism, whether it's American capitalistic type dollar imperialism or whether it's Soviet imperialism. They're both bad and evil, and we shouldn't do that. Well, that's not what Cold Warriors like. And he screwed with their money as well, setting Bobby to break up the stranglehold that the mafia had on all sorts of things, failing to get rid of Castro because both the company and the mob made loads and loads of money in Cuba in the Batista era, loads and loads of money, gambling, prostitution, drugs, loads of stuff. Well, when Fidel got in, like him or loathe him, he put an end to all of that sort of thing. That screws with the money of some extremely powerful people. Failing to sort of look after companies like the United Fruit Company and stuff. Just not helping out the global imperial project for the United States. That puts him on the wrong side of these old Cold Warrior types. So, I think that's the why. There he is, basically firing Alan Dulles, giving him a medal and saying, be an elder statesman, but you're not in control of the CIA anymore, sort of thing. Now, Alan Dulles was extremely, extremely powerful. He had a brother, John Foster Dulles, who was Secretary of State, so the equivalent of our Foreign Secretary. This is sort of under Truman, in the Truman years. So for a few years there, the Dulles brothers controlled, nominally at least, controlled nearly all foreign policy. John Foster Dulles is sort of the legitimate side of foreign affairs, foreign relations, and his little brother Alan controlling all the dirty secret side of everything. And he had a giant nexus of connections, everything from publishing, obviously the intelligence services, all sorts of... So one of his best friends was Douglas Dillon, C. Douglas Dillon, who was, a number of things, but in the end, Secretary for the Treasury. Just so happens that back then, I'm pretty sure it's not the case anymore, but back then, all of the Secret Service came under the control of the Department of the Treasury, of all things. Don't ask me why that was. I don't know. But that's how it was back then. Whoever's in control of the Treasury essentially was the boss of the Secret Service. Now, Douglas Dillon and Alan Dulles were literally best friends. to the point where they went on holiday with each other all the time. They'd go and spend time at David Rockefeller's estate or each other's estates, and they were thick as thieves, absolutely thick as thieves. So, okay, this is what I think happened. Just a pure theory, and it's all alleged, because I've got no actual insight. I think this is what happened. Alan Dulles wants to whack JFK. Now, he goes to his killers at the CIA, like James Angleton. If you go to the next, I think we've got, that's Jim Angleton, years after, actually. James Jesus Angleton. He'd go to someone like Angleton or Bissell, Richard Bissell, or Frank Wisner. He'd go to one of these guys, maybe Dick Helms, who later became the head of the CIA. And he'd say, I'm considering whacking JFK. Whether they'd have to be on board. If I did want to do something like that, how is it possible?
Hypothetically.
Yeah.
You went with the Ben Shapiro. Hypothetically speaking.
Could we put a team together to do that? Someone like James Angleton says, sure. Oh, Jim Angleton, what secrets did you take to the grave with you? Who knows? So he said, yeah, we can do that. So then he'd go to somebody, there's people further down, people like I mentioned already, people like Cord Meyer or Bill Harvey.
Who's this gentleman?
That's Bill Harvey. Bill Harvey was a bit of a crazy man, really. He was super high up in the CIA, like sort of second, third tier CIA. He was thrown out of the FBI for being too much of a loose cannon. So the CIA took him on. He'd threaten people all the time, personally. There's one story in Spycatcher where a really, really senior MI5 guy goes over and meets with him, and he sort of intimidates him, like shows him that he's got a gun in his waist pocket and like threatens. He's drunk in really high level meetings and shouting and swearing. Crazy man. So you go to Bill Harvey. Angleton maybe goes to Bill Harvey and says, put together a kill team. We need shooters. Now, where they really got them for, again, there's some people said there was some Corsican shooters, maybe French shooters. Maybe that you get people, professional assassins from Europe that come over to the United States, do the job and go straight back to Europe and never return. It may be something like that happened. Maybe they were just straight up mob guys. I happen to think there were a number of shooters in Dealey Plaza. I happen to think there was at least 3 shooters. I don't think Lee Oswald himself was one of them. I think he was in the book depository building, but I don't think he was firing a gun that day. He was either a spotter or exactly what he said he was, a patsy. I think Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy, which is an old-fashioned way of just saying a scapegoat, just a stooge to take the blame for something.
So if he was a patsy, he'd been positioned?
Yeah, exactly.
Into the book depository so that he could later be picked up and fingered with all of the other evidence they found with him.
I think very quickly to say, because this is a massive rabbit hole, I could spend ages on this, just to say a few words about Lee Oswald. He is a crazy, fascinating figure. He's definitely involved in the intelligence services. But at a low level, he wasn't very old. He was in his early 20s still. He was sort of a wannabe. He was in the US Marine Corps, picked out quite early as being intelligent. And then he worked for a while in Japan, just ground crew or analysis stuff for the U-2 spy missions. Then he decided to defect to the Soviet Union. Like you just do that in 1960 or whenever it was. The Soviets take him in. The intelligence services were trying to plant him in Russia to see if he could find anything out. But the Russians, far too savvy for that. We're just like, yeah, okay, bro, we'll give you a flat somewhere in sort of Russia somewhere, but we're not letting you anywhere near state secrets. We're not going to use you as sort of a KGB asset or anything like that. They saw it a mile away. So anyway, not after too long, a year or 2 or 3 or something in Russia, he defects back, he comes back to the United States. He's got a Russian wife, incidentally. He marries a Russian woman there. He comes back, and when he comes back, they just immediately let him in to America and just be normal again and have a job. And so that stinks to high heaven. That absolutely stinks to high heaven. He is part of the intelligence apparatus on some level. He's involved in that world and that game. So the people have said the fingerprints of intelligence are all over Lee Oswald, absolutely all over it. But the evidence, the physical evidence, seems that he couldn't have been on that high up floor shooting a rifle that day. because he was seen somewhere else. I don't want to get into the weeds of all the details, but it's physically
He does
not
want to.
It's not really physically possible that he was able to sort of be in two places at once, because he was seen much lower in the building. There's not time for him to have come down in the elevator or run down the stairs and be completely unflustered drinking a can of Coke moments after the shots rang out. I think he's absolutely fine, but I think he was exactly what he said he was, a patsy. Anyway, so that's enough on Lee Oswald. So I think Alan Dulles goes to his CIA guys and say, what if put a kill team together? They say fine. Next he'll go to someone like Douglas Dillon and say, if we were going to do this, at any point, if any of these senior guys within the conspiracy say no, it's going to be a no. But they all say yes. Goes to someone like Douglas Dillon and says, if we needed to get the CIA to the Secret Service, to sort of change the motorcade route. If we need to do that, if we need to make sure that there's not a bulletproof bubble on the president's limousine, if we need to make sure the two guys standing either side of the limousine are sort of called off at the last minute, we're going to need you, Dillon, to do that sort of thing. There's a clip there. Can we go straight to the clip, the YouTube clip?
That's a horrifying image there. Carrying on.
I've got a YouTube clip.
Here we
Yeah,
are.
play this. Plays this.
Do you mind playing this,
actually,
Jack?
that's JFK and Jackie in the motorcade, guys jogging alongside a Secret Service detail, and look, they're told stop.
Examine the scene 4 more times.
Stop running alongside the limousine, and the guys are going, what? Why? Yeah, you get the point. You don't need to watch anymore.
And then bang.
Lee Harvey Oswald hasn't got the power to do that. It could not have been Lee Harvey Oswald on his own. People that insist that, when you say to them, well, what about the changing of the route and getting the CIA to do that? So what about all the sorts of problems with the commission after the fact? Did Lee Harvey Oswald from the grave pick exactly the right people to sit on the Warren Commission? Did he? Okay, so I haven't got much time. I've already wasted loads of time here. Some of the pictures were some of the people I was talking about. If you go back a few, like there's LBJ. That's Douglas Dillon. Dick Helms.
Who on earth is that?
Who is that?
BioGuide Congress.gov.
Who is that a picture of? Not sure.
It doesn't say.
Okay.
Mystery. Another one of the mysteries.
I think that was one of the Cabell brothers, actually. I think that was Earl Cabell.
Oh, all right.
He was the mayor of Dallas. Anyway. Okay, so, and then it goes to someone like Douglas Dillon, then he'll go to someone like the Cabell brothers saying, can we make this happen? Then he'll go to someone like LBJ. LBJ sort of had to be in on it on some level, because after it all goes down, you need to be able to control the narrative afterwards. And in this case, the Warren Commission will pick someone who's whiter than white, Chief Justice Earl Warren, the Chief Justice. So he really wasn't in on it. He couldn't have been. He is whiter than white. But we'll get someone like that to lead this commission, and then we'll paint the narrative that there's this lone killer, and that'll be the end of it. And the killer the quote-unquote killer, really needs to have died that day. I think it was a mistake that he lived. When they realised he'd lived and he'd
started speaking about it.
Started speaking, they needed him dead straight away. So they get
Jack Ruby.
Jacob Leon Rubenstein to murder him.
More accurately, yes.
Yeah, no, that is his name, Jacob Rubenstein. To sort of literally come out of the shadows and be judge, jury and executioner. No need for any justice, no need for a trial. Don't worry about any of that.
Before this, who was Jack Ruby?
Okay, so he owned a nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
He was an associate of the mob. So he's not a made man. He couldn't be a made man. He was son of Polish people. So
he wasn't Italian. So.
No. He was Jewish, and so he was an associate. So he's sort of heavily in with the mob, like Jimmy the Gent in Goodfellas.
Oh, yeah.
You could be an Irishman. You could be well in with the mob, but you're not actually made. You're not actually a made guy. So anyway, that's who he was, sort of a nightclub owner, sort of low life dude, and apparently he was so outraged at the murder of his beloved president that he just couldn't stand for Lee Oswald to be breathing anymore.
I'm sure he was an incredible patriot.
He just couldn't stand him walking around living. Again, no need for justice or anything, or trial or anything like that. So just
even though the case was presumably airtight because they caught him red-handed.
presumably. It's one of the things, actually, one of the points I was going to make. Do you know you've seen The Truman Show?
Yeah.
There's a bit in The Truman Show when he's arguing with his wife, and at one point she gets scared and does start just addressing the producer or the director.
Oh,
That point?
yeah.
And he's like, what was that? Like, what are you doing? Like, suddenly it was a moment of, oh, there is this vast conspiracy against me and my whole reality is a sham. That's what I feel like the image of Jack Ruby coming out of the crowd and just murdering Lee Oswald like that. Because sort of until that moment, it would be hard, it is a bit conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat wearing territory to say there's all these guys, the Cabell brothers, and it's Alan Dulles, and LBJ must be in on it, and da-da-da. It's all a bit pie in the sky. But then there's that moment where what's really going on sort of has to rear its ugly head, at least just for a moment. That Jack Ruby comes out of the crowd and silences Oswald like that. Like, and I think that's what people realised at the time. Well, it's definitely what people realised at the time. They're like, this really, really terrible tragedy's happened, but when Oswald's murdered, it's like we're looking at something, it suggests or infers that something extremely big and sinister is going on. So I guess I've taken up just about my time.
I think we should wrap that up now.
There's a million other things to say about it. But so 61 years ago today, don't forget your dying king, America.
Yeah. If there's one thing you've learned from this, it's that you should subscribe to the website just to watch Epochs. Because if you enjoyed that, Bo's got literally over 100 episodes going into much greater detail than that on a range of different subjects.
Over 180 episodes.
Coming up to 200.
Thanks for watching, folks. If you'd like to support us, and we'd really appreciate it if you did, go over to lotus.com, sign up for only £5 a month, and watch Bo's incredibly detailed series on the life of Julius Caesar. In this one, part 10, he's discussing what happens when Caesar goes to Britain. Like I said, part 10. This is how deep we end up getting into these subjects. And of course, go over to X, formerly Twitter, and follow us at lotuseaters_com.